Hi everybody, Matt and Paul here from Fiduciary Wealth with another video for you today. And today we're normally talking about people relocating from the UK. Today we're doing a bit of a reverse. So this video is for those planning on returning to the UK. So expats returning to the UK is what we're talking about today, Paul.
Yeah, moving back to the UK is not as uncommon as people think. I mean, people do leave with the intention of never returning back to UK, but sometimes the death of a spouse or ill health can result in a reassessment of their lives, and it's not unusual that some do decide to go back home for treatment or to be close to family if their spouse partner passes away. But that has tax implications um, as a result of the UK autumn budget, which kicked in April, correct?
Correct, yeah.
In April 2025. So Matt, talk us through they call it, they use the acronym FIGS, Foreign Income and Gains Regime, and the new rules concerning IHT for people returning or people leaving, and what options are there. Maybe a UK bond could work in certain instances. So
Yeah,
give
of
us your
course.
knowledge and your insights for those who do go back to UK.
I will try my best, Paul. I think the one thing I'd start by saying is that, as always, I guess is the caveat we share with all videos. It depends on your individual circumstances, and especially with this and under the new rules, it depends how long you've been out the UK for. Um, and the other thing that we would always say is, I know a lot of us maybe when we move abroad don't plan to return to the UK, but if you are returning to the UK, it's very important to plan in advance before you return to the UK. Once you re-trigger UK tax residency, there are certain kind of planning opportunities that may not be available for you, which you want to do while you're still abroad. It also depends on what country you're returning to the UK, etc., etc. Um, but I start with covering UK inheritance tax because the rules have changed regarding that, as you say, Paul, in last year's autumn budget. So, in short, the UK in the UK inheritance tax used to be based on the concept of domicile, which I won't go into, but now we're under the new residency regime, which started in April 25. And so if you're leaving the UK, you have to be out of the UK for 10 years before you're outside of the scope for UK inheritance tax as a general rule. That doesn't quite apply to UK citus assets. So therefore, if you're returning to the UK and you've been outside of the UK for more than 10 years, you don't necessarily trigger UK inheritance tax straight away. So to give a practical example, if you've been outside of the UK for 14 years, you have 4 years before you re-trigger UK inheritance tax. So you've been out 14 years, you come back for those first 4 years, no UK inheritance tax apart from on UK citus assets. On year 5, then you will re-trigger UK inheritance tax. If you've been out 20 years, then you have a full 10 years till you're back in the system. Anything above 20 years, you don't get an additional. So 10 years is effectively the maximum. So if you've been out 30 years, you return to the UK, you don't have 20 years till you're back in the system. You have that maximum of 10 years. So if you're in that position where you have been out more than 10 years, you do have a few more options than those who haven't. And one of those options for people who've been out for more than 10 years is using the foreign and income and gains, FIGS, as they call it. Now, again, this is a new system. This has been replacing the old remittance-based taxation. So this is linked into the change of the domicile rules in the UK. So effectively, if you've been out for more than 10 years, for the first 4 years, when you return to the new UK, you can receive foreign income and gains tax-free. So there are a few caveats with that. So if you do claim under the FIG rules, you don't have access to the UK personal allowance, and you don't have the UK capital gains tax allowance for those years. So the whole point of the FIGS rule is not saying, okay, I'm going to come back to the UK. I've got 4 years of no taxation. You really, to kind of go back to the start of the video, you really need to kind of plan in advance. Okay, how are you going to structure your investments and finances to take advantage of those 4 years? And also after that 4 years, how will you be receiving income after those 4 years in the most tax efficient way? And one of the ways you can do that, I think you mentioned this at the start, Paul, is a UK bond. And now we won't go into too much technical detail today, because again, the point of these videos isn't to give advice that applies to each and every one of you, but it's to give a guide of the options that are available. And for those who are in this position, you can contact us for more tailored advice. But a UK bond is something that could apply. And a UK bond is something that you can tie in with a discounted gift trust. And the purpose of these two products coming together is to protect against inheritance tax. So this is where the discounted gift trust element of this comes in. And in short, effectively, the insurers assess you when this is set up, and they apply part of the investment that goes into the bond as to be immediately outside of your estate for UK inheritance tax. And as the years go on, you are effectively gifting via this structure. And after 7 years, the whole investment has been gifted out of your estate, and therefore using the UK 7-year gift rule, that can be outside of your estate for UK inheritance tax. The UK bond element of it is you invest into a UK bond, and then you can draw. So it's a lump sum investment. So this is probably, investments and assets that you've gained as you've been working abroad. Maybe you're selling your property that you accumulated abroad. You invest into the UK bond as a lump sum, and you have 5% tax-free from that investment you can take every year, completely tax-free in the UK. That's a kind of 5% allowance, so it does roll over. So say in year 1, you don't use that. Year 2, you have 10% and so forth for 20 years. There are also other more well-known, investment and tax planning things that you can use when you return to the UK. There's obviously your personal allowance, so you can take income up to that level. You have a capital gains allowance, which is a lot lower. This is, again, if you're not taking advantage of the FIGS rule. You have things like ISAs, which can be very tax efficient, but bear in mind there's a £20,000 limit, which you can't accumulate when you're overseas as well. So there's a lot to think about. Again, depending on your personal situation, you can use the use of international pension schemes as well. But also we have to bear in mind that under the new rules from 2027, pensions will become part of our estate for UK inheritance tax as well, if you're within UK inheritance tax. So there's a lot to consider when returning. I think from my experience as well, we see people returning to the UK, and because it's where we're originally from, we're a little bit more kind of familiar with it. Maybe we think, okay, this will be easier to manage. I will do that when I get back. But I guess we reiterate the message that this is really important to plan in advance, ideally a minimum of 6 months before you re-trigger UK tax residency.
I just got a few points. I take it that international pension plans are classed differently to QROPs and QNAPs, and they're not UK-cited pensions that can be maybe disinvested before returning to the UK and maybe go straight into a UK bond. Is that correct?
that is a definite good option, and especially for somebody taking advantage of the FIGS rules. You've got an international pension scheme. You've effectively got that 4 years where you can draw on that tax free, and then maybe just before year five, you roll that into a UK bond, exactly how you're suggesting, Paul, and then take advantage. So it's a really good point, Paul, how on the surface, there's a few different options, but the way of combining them and taking advantage of different rules, you can really, really squeeze, the amount of tax that you're paying in legitimate ways.
Exactly. I mean, we've mentioned the disinvesting from an international pension plan, taking full advantage of FIGs, and then reinvesting that into a UK bond. But equally, if there's any loose assets, investment assets, let's say someone's been out of the UK for 20 years. So am I right in saying they've got 10 years before they fall under the IHT umbrella and are subject to UK inheritance tax?
Correct. Yeah.
So they can put it into a UK bond, which is then settled into a discounted gift trust, which means that part of it is subject to the 7-year gift rule. But because you've got 10 years of UK IHT exemptions as a result of the 20 years you've been out of the country, it means as effectively the 7-year gift rule doesn't apply. And the UK bond becomes immediately completely tax-free forever of UK inheritance tax. Is that correct?
Exactly. So you're effectively guaranteeing that sum would never trigger UK inheritance tax by, again, combining those two rules.
So, I mean, there's different ways of achieving the same outcome. And whilst I think it's quite, it's quite harsh. The Labour government have introduced rules which are really, really tough. They've pushed people to invest in pensions so they don't become dependent on the state, only to then tax them even when they're outside. But I mean, rather than whinge about the damage that Labour have done, and which will potentially decimate a lot of pension schemes, it's a question of seeing how can you take advantage of the new rules, because some of the changes they've done, they haven't really given thought to the consequences. They left other loopholes that can be exploited, right? It always
Yeah.
happens. They
Yeah.
tighten one place and then they create another big gaping hole that can be exploited. So I think everything is not doom and gloom, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And we see it often, expats who've maybe worked abroad or even retired abroad, they've accumulated all that wealth, and we all understand that, we need to pay taxation, but these are legitimate, you know, ways put in place by the government to help people kind of protect that. So why would you not take advantage of that rather than effectively voluntarily, paying additional tax? It doesn't make sense. And there's obviously, income tax we're talking about here, capital gains tax savings, inheritance tax savings as well. There's a lot can be saved as part of this process.
True. But like everything else, I think you mentioned it at the beginning, the advice is really tailored to the individual and their circumstances. There's no one size fits all. And because it's complex and complicated, they should really seek or reach out to an advisor that is conversant with cross-border taxation and returning back to UK to make sure that there's a seamless transition back to UK, and to take full advantage of the opportunities to, as you rightly say, limit income tax, capital gains, UK inheritance tax is really a great opportunity to take full advantage of the changes arising from the UK autumn budget 2024.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say, Paul, actually, it's a good point, talking to somebody who understands cross-border financial planning, because I think a lot of people think, okay, I'm a Brit, I'm returning to the UK, speak to a UK advisor, but obviously they're not familiar with this sort of work. Why would they be? They're familiar with, people going through the UK system. So although you're returning to the UK, you really need someone who understands that kind of nuance and okay, who's an expert in doing so. And if you are planning on returning to the UK, I guess if you're watching this video, that there's maybe a good chance you are doing that. Feel free to reach out. We're happy to have an initial chat with you just to figure out how we can help, and we can take it from there. Otherwise, if you're watching this just because you enjoy watching me and Paul on screen, then make sure you subscribe and like and share the videos. But for now, I hope that one helps, and we'll return with another video soon. Thank you. Goodbye.